Ahoy, mateys, and welcome to another episode of I'm Ready, a SpongeBob SquareCast. My name is Captain Eric, and we are beginning our sail through the second season of SpongeBob SquarePants. That's right, if you are joining us for the first time, or you are already a part of the Ready crew, we are setting sail today through the second season of SpongeBob SquarePants. And with the second season, we get a new animation style. Gone are the traditional animation of the first season of SpongeBob SquarePants. Here we are on computers, digitally being animated for the very first time. And with the new changes of season 2 of SpongeBob, we move on to the new changes of I'm Ready, a SpongeBob SquareCast. There are 3 changes I am proud to bring you as we continue this adventure with each other. The first of those changes is a new mailbag segment at the end of every single episode of this show. If you would like to write in and have your question or comment read on the Snail mailbag, you can email me at snailmail@euphonics.com. That is UFONYX.com. If you have questions about SpongeBob, if you have questions about Nickelodeon, anything you'd like to know, or anything you'd like to point out, something I missed, a correction to something I've said, or a different opinion of something that I've said, email me in the Snail mailbox, and I'll make sure to read that out. I reached out to a few longtime fans that I've had around the country and asked them to just, hey, what are some just first questions you'd like me to read on the inaugural Snail mailbox? And I'll get to those right at the end of the episode. Another change that is going on in terms of interviewing guests, and when I bring guests on, throughout the very first season, when I had a guest on or somebody I was interviewing, I would usually spend the first half of the episode talking with the guest, learning about their life, taking a break, and then during that break, we would watch the SpongeBob episode together, and then we would record about that SpongeBob episode. Through season 2, I am changing that formula up, and this is a change that I talked with a few fans out there to get their feedback about this, and most agree that this is at least worth trying out. So anytime I have a guest on the show, we will be watching the episode first, and then immediately going into recording the podcast. So the beginning part of the conversation will be more SpongeBob-centric, where we'll talk about the episode at hand, point out some of the pieces of trivia for that episode, and then let the conversation kind of bleed out from there. And of course, before the entire episode ends, we will get to the mailbag, which will be more SpongeBob animation, Nickelodeon centric. So that's kind of the trade-off there. I'd like to have more free-flowing conversations so that it's a little bit more enjoyable for myself, but then also for you listening. And of course, nothing is really set in stone. If it's something that you have feedback on, that's why I opened up that email address. So even for things about the show that you don't even want read, you just want things for me to read, send it over to snailmail@euphonics.com. As for the third change, we're going to go right into it because it is a big part of today's episode. This week in Nickelodeon history.
Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon.
This week in Nickelodeon history is a big week. We have a lot to cover, so I don't want to waste much time, but I do want to let you know that my research for this segment is finite. So if I'm only really going to be trying to get big items, big episodes of shows, big moments and dates in a show's history, video game releases, things like that. If I miss something that you'd think I should have mentioned, email me once again at the snail mail email, because I would definitely like to talk about things that you guys are into, or things that you think I should have talked about. Anyway, on to the moments. Now, we have a lot to go over because when I started this, I was like, all right, what things have popped up during this week of December, between December 6th and December 12th, and boy, was my plate filled. When I initially tried to talk about this, it took way too long, and I'm gonna be here all night if I talk about all of these things in detail. So for a lot of these things, I'm just gonna give you a very quick thoughts of, and for others, I'm just going to kind of quickly move past to let you know that they existed and that they happened this week, because we have a lot of Christmas-centric stuff coming up. Just like the first thing we're going to talk about is 28 years ago on December 6th, 1992, we had the Rugrats episode, The Santa Experience, one of the better Nickelodeon Christmas specials, a very fun Rugrats Christmas special. They would have a few more throughout their entire run, holiday-themed or Christmas-themed episodes. Of course, Rugrats is more well-known for the big Hanukkah special they have, and even the Kwanzaa special they had. So this one really stands above the pack, and it's honestly probably the first Christmas special I can remember watching. But definitely check it out. Add it to your Christmas repertoire. The Santa Experience is one of the ones I would highly recommend. Next to it, 27 years ago this week, on December 12th, 1993, we had the Doug Christmas special, Doug's Christmas Story. Let me just tell you, in the realm of Nickelodeon Christmas specials, Doug's comes out of complete left field on its subject matter. It is not a hold your hand Christmas special. It actually deals with something kind of dark with pork chop that I'm not going to spoil if you've never seen it. I think Doug, the Nickelodeon run, is still available on Hulu, so if you have Hulu, definitely go check that out. If not, I'm sure it's going to be available on Paramount Plus next year, at least definitely the Nickelodeon run. The Disney version is very much available on Disney Plus. But yeah, Doug's Christmas Story, one of the real shining lights of that whole show, because I think people would expect Doug to have a pretty kind of plain Jane Christmas story, and they definitely don't do that. So give Doug's Christmas Story a watch. 23 years ago this week, Our Real Monsters had its last episode on December 6th, 1997. In my opinion, one of the more underrated Nicktoons out there. Our Real Monsters really kept my attention throughout the 90s, and even though it wasn't one of my favorite shows, I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it should be talked about a little bit more, but it's a shame that it isn't. Of course, the final episode was comprised of Laugh Crumb Laugh and the actual final new episode we would ever see, Rookie Monsters. I don't remember those episodes at all. I certainly would love to revisit and go back and watch all the episodes in order, but that'll come probably later once I catch up with SpongeBob episodes of this podcast and I'm running out of things. Maybe I'll move on to Our Real Monsters. But along with Our Real Monsters, 21 years ago, we watched the final episode of the original incarnation of Figure It Out. Figure It Out, for those that don't know, was a game show by Nickelodeon in which they would have a kid come onto the show with a unique skill or who owns something really unique. The audience would get to know what this action is, or this thing that they own, or this thing that they do. And the show would have 4 guest panelists try to guess the action or what it is, and there would be a board, Billy the Answer Head, who would have all of the words covered. If you happen to say one of the words that are on the board, there'd be this big trumpet sound, and it would reveal to everybody, and you'd have to try to guess. And there was different rounds. Honestly, I remember the show because of the really fun moments, and I loved the secret slime action. Every episode, there would be a secret slime action that if any of the contestants did the action, they would get slimed. Sometimes repeatedly. Sometimes you would just get constantly slimed, because sometimes they would just make the secret slime action super specific to somebody. Like the episode that Steve Burns was on, Steve from Blue's Clues, the secret slime action was owning a blue dog. Yeah, no one else was going to get slimed during that except for Steve. So when those moments would happen, that was a lot of the fun for me. But there would be a lot of episodes, and I'm sure you could probably think of some, where the kids they would bring on would have really bizarre reasons why they were there. Like drinking milk through their nose or something. I felt like sometimes it was a bit of a reach with that show. But yeah, it aired its final episode on December 12th, 1999. It was eventually revived in 2012 to 2013, but clearly couldn't capture the same magic of the original. 20 years ago this week, SpongeBob aired its first Christmas special, Christmas Who. I'm not going to go into grave detail about this because eventually we're going to get to that episode this season, but it is one of the best Christmas specials of all time. It is certainly one of the best Nickelodeon Christmas specials of all time, and it's one of my favorite SpongeBob episodes in general. I love Christmas Who. Everything about that episode, every joke about that episode, I love it to death. It's one of the highlights, and it'll never get old watching that around the Christmas season. 19 years ago this week, Fairly Odd Parents aired its episode Christmas Every Day on December 9th, 2001. One of the best Christmas specials. Again, Nickelodeon knocking it out of the park. Having Timmy wish for Christmas every day, it was a no-brainer. It was a great setup, and I think the way they handled it was fantastic as well. I thought all around it's a fantastic Christmas episode. Along with that, we also had the As Told by Ginger Christmas episode, an Even Steven holiday special on December 10th, 2001. Now, it's honestly a Christmas special I don't remember watching. I definitely have watched it at some point. But even reading the episode description here, Ginger discovers that she's 1/4 Jewish. She decides to celebrate with a Hanukkah party and turns her back on Dodie's Christmas party, which upsets Dodie. Rightfully so, Dodie, I'm with you there. She then decides to throw a party as an Even Steven holiday party. Meanwhile, Hoodsy finds out that the reason Carl doesn't believe in Santa Claus is because he used to wish that his father would come home for Christmas, and he never did. Hoodsy tells a street corner Santa, who happens to be Carl's dad, about this issue, and Jonas decides to finally pay his family a visit. Seems like a lot of heavy stuff happened in that episode, so I honestly might rewatch that and get back to you and let you know what I think about it right now, but As Told by Ginger did not catch my attention for a while. It wasn't even until really the second season that I got heavily into As Told by Ginger, so I kind of missed this whole first season here, but I'll make it up. I'll make it up one of these days. I'll have to rewatch it. 18 years ago this week, we not only got the last episode of Invader Zim on December 10th, 2002, but it was also the Christmas episode. I can't believe that they ended off on the Christmas episode. I mean, I'm glad they did. I absolutely love Invader Zim. And it's certainly in the realm of most misused Nicktoons. It is the king. It is the cult head of the table when it comes to misused Nicktoons. Invader Zim, definitely one of the shortest runs when it ended of any Nicktoon up to that point, with only 27 episodes and 2 seasons. Most of those episodes in the second season didn't even get to air on television until 2006 on the Nicktoons network. Nickelodeon had these episodes just sitting there and didn't air them. I mean, we could go down the laundry list of the mistakes they made with Invader Zim, but, you know, if they didn't make those mistakes, who knows how beloved Zim then becomes. You know, if Zim goes on for 4 or 5 seasons, does it still have the same staying power that it does now? I don't know. I can't answer that question. So in kind of some ways, you have to be happy that Nickelodeon misused Zim, because it just helped fuel that fire that was under the fan base. But as far as the most horrible Xmas ever, I gotta say it's one of my favorite Invader Zim episodes. I love when Christmas specials... I love when Christmas specials go an alternate route than what you would expect. But even on the episodes where something happens you do expect, it's a nice feeling. But man, when a Christmas special can just go left field, that's when I can really appreciate it. And I appreciate Invader Zim because of that. Also, 18 years ago, not to crowd over Invader Zim, but the Rugrats aired their second Christmas special, Babes in Toyland, on December 12th, 2002. 17 years ago, we had Jimmy Neutron's holiday special, Holly Jolly Jimmy, on December 8th, 2003, and Blue's First Holiday on December 12th, 2003. Both really fantastic Christmas specials. I especially love Holly Jolly Jimmy because it gives Jimmy a chance to really be the antagonist and really come around to the idea of Santa Claus throughout the episode, because man, is he a jerk throughout that entire episode, and he really gets his comeuppance things a little bit. But then I honestly, I threw Blue's Clues on here because I really think Blue's First Holiday is an excellent episode of this show. I watched it a few years ago. I'd never watched it when it was fresh, but when I found out that it was a show about baby Blue and young Steve and young Joe and their Christmas together, it was very heartwarming to watch. So I definitely recommend it, especially if you have a younger kid. I don't think they need to really know Blue's Clues to be able to enjoy that Christmas special. 16 years ago, we had a trifecta this week in 2004. We had the All Grown Up Christmas special, A Finster Who Stole Christmas, on December 7th, 2004. The My Life as a Teenage Robot Christmas special, A Robot for All Seasons, on December 8th, 2004, and the Chalk Zone Christmas special on December 9th, 2004, When Santas Collide. Now, out of the three of those, shout out to my man Colin. When I told him about this segment and I brought up Chalk Zone, he talked about that Christmas special. He says it was, I think, life-changing, or it was a big episode. I definitely remember that, but the one out of those three that really stands out to me is My Life as a Teenage Robot. You need to understand, like I had mentioned, I love when shows go in the left field route for their Christmas specials, and My Life as a Teenage Robot definitely not only went left field, but they made an episode that I adore. I am not the biggest My Life as a Teenage Robot fan, and I definitely think it was mishandled, especially by the end of its run. But its Christmas special for me really knocked it out of the park. It's an episode in which Jenny, the main character, gets kidnapped by a kid named Todd Sweeney, and for a year of her life without her knowing, is forced to destroy every single holiday, on Valentine's Day, on St. Patrick's Day. So by the time she wakes up a year later and realizes all of the destruction she's caused, it's a story you never would have thought that a kid's show would do. It's crazy. I'm not going to spoil it or what happens in the end, but if you've never seen A Robot for All Seasons, please go out of your way and watch it. I think it's an enjoyable episode and definitely an enjoyable Christmas episode. 15 years ago, we had the Danny Phantom Christmas special, A Fight Before Christmas, on December 6th, 2005. I'm a massive Danny Phantom fan. You have Will Arnett as the ghostwriter, who is definitely a formidable foe. They found a way to really bring the holiday season into Danny Phantom. It works so well. Can't say enough good things about it. I absolutely love it. 12 years ago, we had the Rugrats Preschool Days air its final episode on December 7th, 2008. And we also had the Fairly Odd Parents with their second Christmas special, Merry Wishmas, on December 12th, 2008. For those that don't know what the Rugrats Preschool Days are, at some point in 2001, it was announced that there was going to be a spin-off of Rugrats called Angelica and Susie's Preschool Days, and it would deal with Angelica and Susie in preschool. Of course, this initially was made as a 13-episode show, but eventually was bumped down to 4 television specials, with the final one airing December 7th, 2008. This show is super weird. It has a different art style, a different feel to it. They definitely didn't put 100% of their effort into it, because at the time, that's when they were really cranking out All Grown Up, and Preschool Days definitely sat on the back burner as far as creativity goes. I really think it shouldn't have been made at all. If I'm being perfectly honest, it kind of just stands out really bizarrely, and I don't have anything good to say about it, honestly. So we're going to move on. 11 years ago, the Fresh Beat Band aired its final episode. This was out of my demographic. I was definitely not watching Nick Jr. at the time, but this was one of the big moments that happened, and apparently this was a massive show. 60 episodes, one standalone special. Kudos to the Fresh Beat Band. They had a great run. Looks like they did pretty well. They had some albums that were released, or at least one album was released. They had some DVDs released. Good for them. But yeah, their final episode aired 11 years ago. I'm sure that's going to shock some kids there. And then 4 years ago, on December 9th, 2016, Nickelodeon aired its very first original animated TV movie, Albert, starring one of my favorite comedians out there, Bobby Moynihan, as a kind of small, crappy Douglas fir tree going on an adventure to become a Christmas tree. It's cutesy. I've seen it once, and I remember thinking it was cute. I don't know if I liked it or not. But hey, it's the Nickelodeon's first original animated TV movie, so that makes it stand above the rest, in my opinion. Magic Conch, will I ever get to meet Tom Kenny?
Maybe someday.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance. Okay. Should I tell fans of the show how they can support us?
Yes.
Goofy Goobers, supporting the show is shockingly easier than catching a blue jellyfish. Right from our anchor page, anchor.fm/SpongePod, you can find links to all of our social media and a support button if you happen to have a few extra clams. Also follow us on twitch.tv/SpongeBobPodcast, where it's not only the official home to our sister show, Video Bob Game Pants, it's also where I stream live drawings of various Nickelodeon characters and host the opportunity for commissions and giveaways. Lastly, the official merchandise store is now open at redbubble.com/people/SpongePod, where various designs will be uploaded inspired by our show, including our official logo, which is now available on a multitude of products like t-shirts, stickers, duvet covers, and even a shower curtain. This is a podcast by a fan, for fans, and will always be fan-driven. Any way you see fit on supporting our show is much appreciated. Thank you, and enjoy.
2,000 years later.
All right, and welcome back to the show. Now, we got all of that Nickelodeon out of the way. Now it's time to get into SpongeBob. And here we are at the beginning of Season 2 with the episode, Your Shoes Untied. Now, I've seen this episode so many times, so I'm not going to have to watch it before starting. But I would recommend, even though I'm going to be commentating over the episode here, I have a bunch of things to talk about. I recommend watching this episode on your own. It brings me such joy. It brings me such laughter. I love so many parts of this episode, and there was a reason why originally this episode was actually going to be my first live episode with an audience and with a very special guest that I'm going to be holding off until later in the season when we can actually have a live show, because I don't want to spoil things like that. But the second I can have a crowd and we can have an enjoyable night of talking and SpongeBob and stories, I'm going to hold that off. But Your Shoes Untied is a massive moment for SpongeBob. A lot of shows really suffer during their second season. It's called the sophomore slump in entertainment. But man, did Season 2 come out of the gate swinging, because not only is this a fantastic episode for its jokes and humor, it ends on a fantastic song and is one of my favorite SpongeBob songs is Loop-de-Loop by Ween. I remember having that very first SpongeBob CD. The second I saw it in Walmart, I purchased it, and I listened. Probably the most listened to song on that CD, other than the theme, was Loop-de-Loop. There's something about that song that is so enjoyable, and having Ween sing it is perfect, because I think they're one of those bands that are just totally like, they are meant for SpongeBob. Like, it fits so well, and I hold that song in my heart dearly. Hopefully, I mean, one of the things having a live audience was being able to sing that song live with everybody. Hopefully I can do that again at some point in my life. But you guys are just going to have to deal with me here talking about it. So if you would like to follow along, I am watching the episode off of Amazon Prime. If you have it on DVD, if you have it on Game Boy Advance Video, by all means, get the episode pulled up, and we will start right at the beginning of the theme song right now. This opening joke of this episode is one of my favorite jokes in SpongeBob history. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because it's one of also the most inappropriate when you kind of think about it. But there's just something about that joke that has always made me laugh, where SpongeBob is watching a sea anemone dance and to some really fun sounding music, and then Gary walks in, and he was actually looking for the sports channel. What were you thinking he was watching, Gary? Look, I'm not going to explain the joke here. If you're an adult, you can appreciate the joke. If you're a kid, it's just funny to see SpongeBob switch over to realistic sports. And I don't even know what team he was watching. I don't know if it was the New York Giants or just some random football team that he switches to. I'm going to have to look at it again here. Yeah, see that team? It looks like the Patriots, like old school away jerseys, or their home jerseys, I think was the white, but it certainly is not that. But I love how on Encyclopedia SpongeBobia, which I do get a lot of my information from, a lot of those like finite, really quick details. For example, did you know that the shoes that Patrick just showed off are basically navy blue high top Converse All-Stars? I didn't know that. I mean, they definitely reminded me of Converse, but I didn't know the specifics there. But yeah, so they list the human football players as debuting in this episode. The human football players are a team of football players who appear on the sports channel playing football. They appear in the episodes Your Shoes Untied, The Sponge Who Can Fly, and Spin the Bottle. Let's see. The football players are teams of humans who wear regular football uniforms. In Your Shoes Untied, one team, the Tampa Bay Bandits, wear white-colored uniforms, while the other team, the Houston Gamblers, wear black. So there we go. The Tampa Bay Bandits and the Houston Gamblers. Man, I would imagine being one of those football players and just watching SpongeBob with your kids and quickly seeing what might be you on the screen. That would probably, that would blow my mind if I was just watching SpongeBob and SpongeBob randomly was watching me for a second. I would feel so honored. But I wonder if those football players even know that they're on an episode of SpongeBob. Somebody should track someone down on that team and just be like, hey, do you know you're in this episode, Your Shoes Untied? So getting into the show here, the crux of this episode is Patrick walking in with his shoes. SpongeBob telling him that he should wear shoes on his feet. Patrick telling him, unfortunately, I don't know how to tie shoes. And we come to the realization that even though SpongeBob is wearing shoes, he's actually always worn shoes, according to him, and never had a time where he took his shoes off, even though we've seen him take his shoes off on plenty of episodes. But we definitely have never seen him tie his shoes. And this is where a lot of the comedy in this episode comes from. To me, it's one of the most accessible episodes of SpongeBob because it's something that anybody can relate to. Kids can relate to it, and adults can relate, knowing that at one point in their life, they found it very difficult to tie their shoes, or at least you can have that conversation with somebody. When was the first time you remember tying your shoes, or did you have a difficult time? Did you get it fairly quickly? I wonder if there's somebody out there who is able to learn how to tie their shoes the first time their parents ever showed them, and they never even needed Velcro. Because I needed to use Velcro for a couple of years because tying your shoes was difficult to me, and now I'm a master at it, so I haven't touched Velcro since. But I love SpongeBob's idea that he slams his feet into the floorboards and then just has to break up the floor to get to the kitchen. It's these like really, I really felt like they properly kind of weighed the comedy here. There's a lot of physical comedy, and there's these really fun, smart moments like in the beginning of the episode. But we have a good group here. By the way, definitely just want to mention, since we missed, this is the first episode to ever have 5 opening credit titles. And I want to give credit to the writers here, Walt Dorn, Paul Tibbitt, and Meriwether Williams. Massive work here, guys. We have our usual who's who of working on SpongeBob here. Derek Dryman, of course, Tom Yasumi, Chris Hedrick, Eric Weiss, Paul Tibbitt, Walt Dorn, Meriwether Williams. Wonderful job, everybody. And of course, we have our guest star, Brian Doyle Murray, returning as the Flying Dutchman in this episode, which is one of my favorite Flying Dutchman moments. I love so much about this episode. But anyway, here we have a very weird moment in which they decided that the Krusty Krab grill, which is usually right under Squidward, be moved to the other side of the kitchen. Now, we've seen this done a few times. Usually the Krusty Krab's kitchen is kind of changed depending on what the story needs. So, of course, in this story, they need this whole comedy bit of SpongeBob shuffling his feet over to the other side of the kitchen to try to bring Squidward a Krabby Patty, when normally he just has to hand it to him because the stove was right under the window. It's for sometimes continuity like that can be bothersome when they change something up for convenience, but the joke here is so well executed. The amount of time it takes for SpongeBob to get over to the window and you think he's making traction when he barely has made a step or two. It's worth kind of looking past the fact that they just rearranged the kitchen for this episode. You can forgive it. I don't think if the joke was as good or as well executed, it would be as forgivable. It'd be more like come on, why'd you move around the kitchen for this? But this whole sequence is hilarious, so I'm glad that they moved around the kitchen. This is apparently Eric Weiss's first episode as a storyboard director instead of a storyboard artist. So good for him on the upgrade there. This is also Walt Dorn's very first episode. Had no idea about that. So thank you, Walt. Your mark has definitely been met here on SpongeBob. But now we're coming up to where SpongeBob is now admitting defeat. He was trying to stay positive throughout the day of being able to kind of work around the fact that his shoes were untied. But now we finally have him realize that he can't go on with untied shoes. And I love the joke here with Mr. Krabs and the coming out in his underwear and like, oh yeah, we are definitely leaving. I actually watched a separate season 2 episode the other day, and it also involved Mr. Krabs being in the bathroom, and I'm like, uh-oh, he's going to be coming out in his underwear, and completely remembered the wrong scene. It was just the fact that it was very similar and was going to have Mr. Krabs storm out of the bathroom, but he happened to have at least put his pants on. Of course, this is also the first episode which the title card is written in cursive. This is, of course, as I've mentioned many times, the first episode to use digital ink and paint in the production. And then this is also the first episode where Painty the Pirate appears outside of the theme song, which I always loved that joke. Here we have SpongeBob really trying to find somebody who could help him tie his shoes. We met an eel right there in the Krusty Krab. We get some jellyfish. We get some really weird creatures here, and of course, SpongeBob even asking a skeleton that is in this sea monster. And here we have our friend Painty the Pirate. And I absolutely love Painty. I love that moment. I love that joke. And here we have one of my favorite side characters, the Flying Dutchman, voiced by the incomparable Brian Doyle Murray. For those that don't know, joining us for the first time, Brian Doyle Murray is the brother of the world famous Bill Murray. But Brian Doyle Murray has had a nice career himself, pretty much outside of his brother's shadow. He's appeared in big movies like Ghostbusters 2, Wayne's World. He's been on shows like Married with Children, movies like Groundhog Day. He appeared alongside his brother. But he's had an incredible voice acting career too that has touched a lot of shows. King of the Hill, of course, SpongeBob with the Flying Dutchman, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, Jackie Chan Adventures. So he is a very hardworking guy. I see Adventure Time on here. He was in Fish Hooks. Of course, appeared in shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Constantly working. What a wonderful character actor, and he does a wonderful job here, of course, as the Flying Dutchman. But we have the monkey chain, the monkey's fist, the monkey! And, of course, the loop knot, otherwise known as the poop loop. It's such a silly little joke, and you would think only appeals to kids, but here I am laughing at it. I absolutely I love the poop loop. I'm a fan of the poop loop, and if someone could make that happen, if there was a way to learn how to do that, I would absolutely learn how to do it just to just to annoy people, or just to be able to do the poop loop noise through a rope. But yeah, he just shows up. Apparently the World Dutchman is really good at making knots, but just for the life of him can't tie shoes. Personally, I think once you learn how to tie shoes, it's like riding a bike. You never really forget. Like once you learn that skill, you don't ever forget. But I really feel bad for SpongeBob in this episode. He really tries hard to tie his shoes, but isn't really taught until Gary comes out of nowhere and is the one to not only tie his shoes, but also teach him how to tie shoes with the help of Ween, which here we are with the Loop-de-Loop song. Absolutely one of my favorite songs in SpongeBob history. Honestly, and this is a hot take here, easily top 5. It's just the energy of that song, the life of that song. It can be informative. Like, I wonder how many kids out there learned how to tie their shoes through the use of the Loop-de-Loop song. You go over and back, left to right, loop-de-loop, pull them tight. Come on now. Yeah, I can't overstate how much I absolutely love the Loop-de-Loop song, and I hope Ween plays that live, because if I ever get a chance to see Ween live, I'm definitely gonna yell, "Loop-de-Loop, come on, play it, play the Loop-de-Loop song." And they probably haven't played it since that time. Who knows? But if any Ween fans out there can tell me if they've played that song live, it would definitely make me want to go see them more than I already do to see that song. But that was Your Shoes Untied. What a great start to season 2. Not only do you have a way to kind of explore more characters of the show in SpongeBob kind of running around finding someone to tie his shoes. You get to bring back the Flying Dutchman. You get really good moments with Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs. Everybody pretty much gets to shine here in this episode, except for Sandy. A few other side characters. Mrs. Puff really wasn't a part of the episode. But it's a really wonderful start to season 2 and sets the stage for these next 2 seasons and kind of the comedy they're looking for and the way things were going to be structured. It's certainly a bit of a change from season 1 in that regard, but we're all uphill from now. Like we're constantly rising with this show, and it's going to be fun to explore all that with you guys. Now on to the Snail Mailbag. This is our brand new segment here on the show. Opening up the Snail Mailbag to any fans out there to write in your questions, your comments, things I missed, things you want me to know about the show, anything you'd like. You can email me your questions, comments, concerns at snailmail@euphonics.com. So for this first one, obviously the email address was not set up. So I reached out to a few fans to write me some questions that they would like me to read on the air for this introduction of the Snail Mailbag. So I want to thank the 3 fans out there who helped me out with this. Thank you. I am very grateful for the fact that you were able to give me these questions on such short notice. We're going to start out here with my buddy Alan from Washington, who wrote to me, out of all of the Nicktoons to not have movies, which one would you like to see? Now, there were 2 ways I took this question. The first way was, well, out of all of the Nicktoons to not have a TV movie or theatrical movie, which one would I like to see? But then there was also that idea of the theatrical, which Nicktoon that didn't have a theatrical movie would I like to see. So even though I'm sure he meant the first one, I'm going to answer both. Out of all of the Nicktoons to not have any sort of TV movie or theatrical movie, it's a very small list at this point. But it's actually one we talked about earlier in the show, Real Monsters. For all of the shows that did not have an extra special long episode or a TV movie or a theatrical movie, I would love to see something done with Real Monsters. I think, especially if they did one now, with the way technology works, everyone has a camera in their pocket. How can the monsters survive in this world? I would like to see that done. But out of the movies, out of the shows that never got a theatrical movie, I think The Fairly Odd Parents is the one that really deserved a theatrical movie. And it's really weird because when everybody talks about the best Fairly Odd Parents movies, 90% of people go right to Channel Chasers. And as much as I love Channel Chasers, it works as a TV movie. I really think Abracatastrophe, their first TV movie, would work the best in a theatrical setting. It's got a lot of humor. It's got a great story. The stakes are the highest they've ever been. They introduced the anniversary muffin, the muffin that could give you a rule-free wish. What? And Crocker eventually gets it and runs the world. It's a massive idea that I know that there were plans for a theatrical Fairly Odd Parents movie, and I wonder if the elements of Abracatastrophe were based on that, or if the movie was planned after that movie, because Butch Hartman has talked about it a few times, but he's never actually opened up about what the story for the theatrical movie would have been. But yeah, Abracatastrophe would have worked really well on the big screen. So that was a question from Alan. Brenda from Toronto, up north. Gotta love Canada up there. I gotta go back right when this pandemic kind of subsides. Which SpongeBob video game would you like to see remade now that they've touched up Battle for Bikini Bottom? The first thing that comes to mind is obviously the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, and I think that would make the most sense since they could just, they just redid these models for Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. You can absolutely reuse all of those models and so many assets from that game. It would be a lot easier. But the other game that came to mind other than Nicktoons Unite was SpongeBob SquarePants Lights Camera Pants, the mini game battle mode game that came out I think 2005. Really fun multiplayer games. They were definitely kind of leaning towards Mario Party-esque, but they were kind of fleshed out a bit more than that. They weren't like quick 30-second, minute-long mini games. They would get substantially harder. And especially I loved the mini games that you were on a team with somebody else against another team of two or two computers. It was certainly a fun game, and I think if it was remade and tweaked a little bit, it would be a nice, wonderful surprise for most people who haven't played it. But that's my answer for that. And to round us off here, we have Trent from Vermont. I'm not sure if they'll be considered episodes of your show, but what are your thoughts on the 2 stop-motion SpongeBob specials? They are planned in line with the episodes of the show, kind of like when I do episodes of the video games, they'll be released kind of when they were released, when the dates of those episodes came out. And now we're talking about It's a SpongeBob Christmas and Legends of Bikini Bottom. I think I like that they exist. I think some of the content in those specials aren't the best SpongeBob quality, but especially the SpongeBob Christmas. It's a wonderful little special, and I like that it aired outside of Nickelodeon. I think it aired on ABC or CBS during their holiday season, and that kind of felt really cool to have this SpongeBob special air on a big network television station. It kind of felt like all eyes in the country were on SpongeBob that night. The fact that it's stop motion, I mean, the stop motion effects look absolutely fantastic, except for Mrs. Puff, who was a little bit lacking. But as far as the main characters of the show, they captured their likeness extremely well in a stop motion way. And they're cute little specials. I enjoy them. I think they're wonderful to watch around their respective holidays. They should be kind of added in if you are like me and you kind of plan out your month of different holiday specials to watch, especially for Christmas and Halloween. But yeah, add those in. I've always enjoyed them. I love the work that went into them, and I would love to see more little offbeat specials like that of different animation styles if they ever try to do anything more like that. But yeah, I would love to see a third one. And I wonder what holiday they would tackle next. I mean, Christmas and Halloween are the biggest ones, but do you think like a stop motion Valentine's Day special would be just as good, or maybe something with Easter in Bikini Bottom? I don't know. That would be really interesting. But that is the snail mail bag for this week, the snail mail box. I haven't decided whether or not it's a box or a bag. But once again, if you want to have a question answered on the show, I can't stress enough, write me whatever you'd like. Of course, content helps keep the show out. So snailmail@euphonics.com. I can't wait to hear what more questions you guys have or what you'd like to know my opinions on. But that is this week's episode of the Squarecast. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a part of the Ready Crew. Any way that you can see supporting this show, whether or not it's sharing a link of an episode, sharing the various links to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Instagram page, giving us a shout out, sending an email into the snail mail email. I promise not to talk about it more in this episode, but I'm going to be pushing it hard, so get ready. But thank you for everything you do. If you're new to us, welcome to the Ready Crew, and we will see you next time here on the SpongeBob Squarecast. Magic Conj, will I ever get to meet Tom Kenny?
Maybe someday.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance. Okay. Should I tell fans of the show how they can support us?
Yes.
Goofy Goobers, supporting the show is shockingly easier than catching a blue jellyfish. Right from our Anchor page, anchor.fm/SpongePod, you can find links to all of our social media and a support button if you happen to have a few extra clams. Also follow us on twitch.tv/SpongeBobPodcast, where it's not only the official home to our sister show, Video Bob Game Pants, it's also where I stream live drawings of various Nickelodeon characters and host the opportunity for commissions and giveaways. Lastly, the official merchandise store is now open at redbubble.com/people/SpongePod, where various designs will be uploaded inspired by our show, including our official logo, which is now available on a multitude of products like t-shirts, stickers, duvet covers, and even a shower curtain. This is a podcast by a fan, for fans, and will always be fan-driven. Any way you see fit on supporting our show is much appreciated. Thank you, and enjoy.